It wasn't there yesterday. Eli stared into the mirror, fingers trembling slightly as he traced the faint but unmistakable line that had appeared overnight, a thin, white scar just above his right collarbone. He didn't remember any injury, no accident, no fall, no drunken misstep, just the usual: gym, work, a quick dinner, and sleep. And now this. He tilted his head, inspecting it closer under the harsh bathroom light. The scar looked old, as if it had healed years ago. But that was impossible. He touched it again. No pain, just a strange warmth beneath the skin. "Eli, you're going to be late," his roommate, Cam, shouted from the kitchen. Eli shook himself out of the daze and grabbed a hoodie, yanking it over his head as he headed out the door. The morning in Brooklyn was brisk, the air already thick with the scent of street cart coffee and burnt bagels. But even as the city moved with its usual restless rhythm, Eli felt out of sync, disconnected, like a radio tuned slightly off station. He kept rubbing the scar through the fabric of his hoodie as he walked. The subway ride was a blur of screeching rails and muffled conversations. He leaned against the door, trying to focus, but his eyes kept catching glimpses of his reflection in the glass. Something about his face, it wasn't just the scar. His skin looked different, not healthier or worse, just different. Like it didn't quite belong to him anymore. At work, things only got weirder. "Eli, did you change your hair or something?" his co-worker Denise asked over coffee. "You look, I don't know, lighter?" "Lighter," she shrugged. "I can't explain it. Like, your energy's different." He forced a laugh, but deep down a cold unease settled in his chest. It wasn't just her. 3 other people made similar comments by noon. His manager, the intern, even the janitor, who squinted at him and muttered, "You're waking up, ain't you?" That stopped him cold. "What did you just say?" The janitor, a wiry man in his 60s, looked at him like he knew something Eli didn't. "Nothing, man, just... Sometimes the body changes when the spirit starts seeing clearer." And with that, he walked off, mop squeaking behind him. By the time Eli got home that evening, his mind was spiraling. He pulled off his shirt, heart pounding, and turned to the mirror again. The scar was still there, but now it was glowing faintly. He stepped back, breath shallow. This wasn't normal. This wasn't explainable. And deep inside, he knew this wasn't just a fluke or a hallucination. Something was happening to him, something real, something he couldn't stop. Eli didn't sleep that night. He tried, lights off, white noise on, chamomile tea by the bed, but the second his eyes closed, he'd see flashes, not dreams, not even nightmares. Just brief, piercing images, a tunnel of light, the scar glowing brighter, hands he didn't recognize reaching out from shadows. By 6 a.m., he gave up. He got dressed, grabbed his keys, and walked out into the sharp morning chill of early spring. No destination, just movement. His feet led him through the side streets of Williamsburg, past shuttered cafes and a stray dog sniffing trash bins, until he stopped in front of a place he hadn't noticed before, an old bookstore wedged between 2 brownstones. No sign above the door, just dusted glass and a rusted handle. Something told him to go in. The bell above the door gave a hollow chime. The store was narrow and dim, with leaning shelves and that unmistakable scent of paper aging in silence. An older man sat at the back counter, grey dreadlocks tied neatly behind his head, reading a leather-bound book. "You opened early?" Eli asked, more out of instinct than curiosity. The man didn't look up. "We open when people need us." Eli hesitated, then stepped deeper inside. "That's a weird answer. It's a weird world." The man finally looked up, and his eyes locked onto Eli's with unsettling clarity. "Especially when you're waking up." Eli froze. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," the man said, standing slowly. He walked over with a calmness that felt rehearsed. "You've started noticing, haven't you? The scar, the glow. People reacting to you differently." Eli's pulse quickened. "How do you know about that?" "Because you're not the first." The man reached behind a shelf and pulled out a thin book, black cover, no title, and handed it to him. "Read this." but not all at once. Let it meet you where you are. Eli turned the book over in his hands. No author, no summary. Just that strange warmth again seeping into his fingers. "Who are you?" he asked. "Name's Jonah. I help people through the early stages." "Early stages of what?" Jonah gave a half smile. "Of becoming who they really are." Eli almost laughed, but something in the man's tone rooted him in place. "This is crazy. I'm not into like New Age stuff or whatever this is." Jonah nodded, unfazed. "Didn't say you had to be." As Eli turned to leave, Jonah called out, "Just remember, as not all changes are visible, but they always mean something." Back out on the street, Eli looked down at the book. The scar beneath his shirt itched faintly, as if it had heard everything. He didn't believe in signs, but he couldn't ignore this one. Eli didn't open the book right away. It sat on his desk all day untouched, as he bounced between distractions, cleaning his room, responding to emails, even calling his mom just to hear a familiar voice. But the pull was constant, like a low hum beneath his thoughts. By nightfall, he gave in. He closed the blinds, lit a candle for no reason he could explain, and sat cross-legged on the bed. The book was heavier than it looked. He flipped to the first page. There were no chapter titles, just paragraphs, each one like a whisper meant only for him. When the body changes without reason, it's the soul speaking louder than the mind. Listen. His breath caught. Marks on the skin, shifts in the eyes, new sensitivities. These are signs, not defects. They mean you're being prepared. He kept reading. Every page felt like it had been written by someone who had watched his last few days through a one-way mirror. You'll feel like you're losing grip on what's real, but that's only because what's real is shifting. He stopped there. The room felt warmer suddenly. He wiped sweat from his brow and noticed something that hadn't been there before, a faint redness around his pupils. He ran to the mirror. His eyes looked sharper, not red from exhaustion, something else, like they were reflecting light in a way they never had before. And just below his collarbone, the scar pulsed faintly, not painful, but alive. He pulled on a hoodie and left the apartment. Again. He couldn't sit still. This time he went to Prospect Park, where the lamplight met the trees and joggers passed by without looking. He found a bench near the lake and sat, watching the reflections shimmer under the moon. "I'm not crazy," he muttered. "You're not," a voice said. Eli spun. A woman was seated a few feet away, staring straight ahead. "I saw your eyes from the path," she said. "They're changing." He blinked. "Do I know you?" "No, but I knew someone like you once." Her voice was calm, but her body was tense, like she was holding something in. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "Take it." Eli hesitated, then took it. "There's a group," she said. "We don't advertise, but we help each other through this phase." "What phase?" She stood. "The kind no doctor can explain." Before he could ask her name, she walked off into the trees. Eli unfolded the paper. A single sentence was scrawled in ink. "If you feel it in your bones, it's already begun." And beneath that, a street address in Crown Heights. Eli looked up, but the woman was gone. Only the echo of her words remained. The address led to a brownstone on a quiet street in Crown Heights. Not the kind of place Eli expected. No signage, no obvious cameras, just ivy creeping up the facade and a weather-worn door painted forest green. He hesitated on the stoop. Part of him still thought this was all ridiculous. Maybe he was having a breakdown. Maybe he needed therapy, not secret meetings with strangers and glowing scars. But that scar had glowed again last night, and his reflection that morning, his eyes were clearer than they had ever been. Not just visibly. They looked like they knew something he didn't. He knocked. A moment passed, then two. Just as he turned to leave, the door opened. A man in his 30s stood in the doorway. Tall, shaved head, wearing simple clothes, not intimidating but focused. His gaze scanned Eli for a long second. "You're early," the man said. Eli blinked. "Is that a problem?" The man stepped aside. No, it means you're listening. Eli entered. The hallway was narrow and smelled faintly of sage and old books. The walls were lined with black and white portraits, people of all ages, all backgrounds. None were labeled. All were looking directly into the camera. "You can call me Marcus," the man said. "We don't use last names here." "Okay. Marcus," Eli replied, unsure. "What is this place?" Marcus led him into a modest living room, high ceilings, a few old chairs, shelves full of notebooks, not books. Everything felt lived in, purposeful. "This is a resting point," Marcus said, "for people going through the shift." "What shift?" Marcus sat, gesturing for Eli to do the same. "Some call it spiritual awakening, some say it's consciousness evolution. Doesn't matter. What matters is your body noticed before your mind did." Eli stared at him. "So, this is happening to others too?" Marcus nodded. "It always has, we just don't talk about it publicly. Too easy to get labeled delusional." Eli hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. "This scar, it wasn't there a week ago. It glows. Not all the time, just when something's off." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Where is it?" "Right here." Eli pulled down the collar of his shirt to reveal it. Marcus looked at it for a long time, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a photo. "Is this it?" Eli's blood ran cold. The image showed the same scar, identical, on the shoulder of a woman, maybe in her 40s. "She came through here 5 years ago," Marcus said quietly. "Disappeared after her final shift." "Final shift?" Marcus looked at him carefully. "We'll get there. First, you need to understand what this scar really means." "And what does it mean?" "It means," Marcus said, "you've already crossed the threshold. There's no going back now." Eli returned home with the photo Marcus had given him tucked into his jacket pocket. He stared at it during the entire subway ride, barely noticing the people around him. The woman in the photo had kind eyes. There was something calm in her face, like she had made peace with something far bigger than herself. And that scar, exactly like his. When he got home, Cam was waiting in the kitchen, half a sandwich in his hand, phone in the other. "Dude," Cam said, mouth half full, "you didn't come back last night, you all right?" Eli didn't answer right away. He was still processing everything Marcus had said. Cam narrowed his eyes. "You okay? You look charged." Eli sat down. "Has anything weird happened to you lately? Physically, I mean?" Cam laughed. "Aside from heartburn every time I eat street tacos? Nah." Eli opened his collar slightly. "This scar just showed up and it reacts, glows sometimes." Cam leaned in. "Dude, what the hell? Have you seen a doctor?" "It's not medical," Eli said, voice low. "I've met people. They've seen this before. It's connected to something bigger." Cam scoffed, but there was unease in his expression. "You're not making sense." "I know," Eli replied. "Neither is any of this." That night, sleep didn't come. So he did what he always did when his brain spun too fast. He put on his headphones and turned the dial on his old analog radio, scanning through static and fragments of distant broadcasts. It was a habit from childhood, comforting in its randomness. But then it happened. As he turned the dial past an empty frequency, a soft, rhythmic sound emerged. Not music, not voices, a pulse. Slow, steady, almost like a heartbeat. He paused. The sound began to shift, forming into a low tone that hummed in sync with something inside his chest. His scar burned, not painfully, but enough to make him sit up straight. Then he heard it, a faint whisper woven into the static. "Listen, you are not alone." He yanked the headphones off, heart hammering. The room was silent. He checked the frequency again, 88.3. Nothing was supposed to be broadcasting there. No music station, no weather alert, just dead air. He turned it back on. The whisper was gone, only static remained, but the scar still glowed. He pressed his palm against it, trying to calm himself. He could feel something beneath the skin, not a lump, not a nerve, something vibrating. alive. The next morning, Eli emailed Marcus. Subject 88.3 body. I think something answered me. Less than a minute later, Marcus replied, "That's the phantom frequency. You're hearing the current. You're further along than we thought." Further along. Eli stared at the screen. Something was calling him, and it was getting louder. The following evening, Eli stood once again in front of the brownstone in Crown Heights, the photo of the scarred woman still tucked in his coat pocket. This time, Marcus wasn't alone. There were others inside. 5 of them, gathered in the living room. Different ages, different backgrounds, but they all turned to look at him the same way, like they recognized something familiar beneath his skin. Marcus gestured for him to come in. "You're right on time." Eli stepped inside slowly, feeling eyes track his every move. No one smiled, but no one looked hostile either. "This is Eli," Marcus said simply. "He's hearing the current." A ripple of interest moved through the group. A woman in her 60s with a shaved head and a scarf around her neck leaned forward. "How strong?" Eli hesitated. "I heard it last night on 88.3, a whisper. It said I wasn't alone." The youngest in the group, a college-aged guy with ink-stained fingers, exhaled, almost in relief. "That's when it really starts." Eli looked around, uneasy. "What is it exactly?" Marcus sat down across from him. "It's not a voice. It's resonance. The beginning of attunement." "To what?" "To the part of you that never got taught in school," the older woman said. "The part that listens without ears." Eli's mouth was dry. "Why now? Why me?" "Because the system's cracking," said the guy with the inked hands. "And people like us, we're the leak." Another member, a middle-aged man who hadn't spoken until now, added, "These changes, physical, emotional, sensory, they're the body's way of keeping up with the shift in frequency. Most people ignore them. You didn't." Eli glanced down at his scar. It wasn't glowing now, but he could feel it warming, as if responding to the conversation. He looked at Marcus. "So what happens next?" "You keep listening," Marcus said, "and eventually you learn to respond." "Respond to what?" "Whatever calls you." He reached beneath the coffee table and pulled out a stack of notebooks, handing one to Eli. "Every one of us keeps one. You start recording what you see, what changes, what comes through." Eli flipped through a few pages, scribbled symbols, sketches of faces, strange timelines, notes on sensations. It was like opening a diary written in a language he'd just started to understand. He looked up. "What if I get it wrong?" "You will," the older woman said. "We all do. At first. But every mistake still moves you forward," Marcus added. Eli nodded slowly. He could feel it already, the subtle shift in his perception, like the ground was tilting beneath everything he thought was stable. The room fell silent, not with awkwardness but shared understanding. Outside, the street was still, but inside something had opened, a door that couldn't be closed again. Eli didn't mean to draw it. He hadn't sketched anything since high school. But there he was, 2 weeks after that second meeting at the brownstone, sitting in his room with the notebook Marcus gave him, pen moving like it had a will of its own. The image took shape slowly, a figure standing at the edge of water surrounded by light. Not glowing, not divine, just real, more present than the rest of the world around it. And from the figure's chest extended a thin line of energy, reaching out toward the sky, as if tethered to something unseen but deeply known. He stared at the sketch for a long time. It was him. He didn't remember deciding to draw it, but now that it was on the page, he couldn't deny it. The scar was there too, faint but central. A symbol, a beginning. The phantom frequency had become part of his nightly ritual. He no longer feared it. The hum, the whisper, the resonance. They grounded him. And he had started noticing other things. Strangers locking eyes with him on the street a beat too long, a bird that followed him home 2 days in a row, streetlights flickering as he passed under them. He recorded everything. His notebook filled fast. One night, Marcus called. "We found her," he said. "The woman in the photo." Eli's heart skipped. She's alive? Yes, in Vermont. She's part of a different circle now. She left without telling anyone, but she left something for you. For me? She saw your name months ago. Eli didn't understand. What do you mean, saw? She said it came to her during a resonance. She didn't know when or how you'd show up, just that you would. She asked that if you ever did, we give you this. The next morning, Eli went back to the brownstone. Marcus handed him an envelope. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, a forest trail flooded with morning light. In the bottom corner, written in delicate handwriting, "When you stop seeking proof, you start seeing truth." No name, no date. But he knew. She had walked this path before him. Maybe they all had. He didn't cry. But something inside loosened, like a knot he'd been carrying for years had finally unraveled. He looked at Marcus. "So, what now?" Marcus smiled. "Now you live, but wider, with ears in your skin, with eyes behind your eyes." That night, Eli returned to Prospect Park. He stood where he had first met the woman who led him here, closed his eyes, listened. The frequency came, low, steady, sure, and for the first time he didn't feel like he was receiving a signal. He felt like he was one, broadcasting, alive in a way he couldn't name, and finally, completely, awake.